For 30 years, the Florida Everglades looked like a lost cause. An invader from Southeast Asia, the Burmese python, moved in and dismantled the ecosystem. There was no effective countermeasure. Raccoons and opossums disappeared by the thousands, wiped out by a predator they couldn't defeat. The official casualty rate for some species hit 99%. The war was supposed to be over. But new field intelligence is changing that assessment. The victims are learning. Field cameras have captured native predators raiding python nests and destroying the next generation of invaders. The swamp isn't just surviving anymore, it is striking back. To comprehend the magnitude of the current counterattack, you must first appreciate the totality of the initial defeat. The invasion of the Burmese python was not a D-Day-style landing, but a slow takeover. The enemy arrived via the international pet trade, a Trojan horse of global commerce that deposited tens of thousands of potential combatants into the state of Florida between 1970 and 2000. The python's dominance came down to two unfair advantages: invisibility and enemy release. Back in Southeast Asia, a python has to worry about tigers, king cobras, and monitor lizards. But in Florida, it faced no such opposition. The top predators of the Everglades, the alligator and the Florida panther, were unprepared for a massive snake of this size. The result was an ecological release, a population explosion unchecked by predation or competition. But the primary weapon of the python was the naive prey syndrome. The mammals of Florida had no evolutionary memory of a predator that hunted by scent and heat, struck with the speed of a viper, and killed by vascular constriction. They did not flee, they investigated, or they simply ignored the threat until it was too late. The casualty figures from this phase of the war are staggering. Lead researcher Michael Dorcas's 2012 assessment reads like an autopsy of the Everglades. Comparing sighting rates before and after the python spread reveals a near-total collapse of the mid-level predators. Raccoon populations crashed by 99.3%, while opossums declined by 98.9%. Marsh rabbits and foxes vanished from large sections of the park. The result is a silent, empty landscape left in the wake of the invader. This was not merely a decline, it was a liquidation. The python acted as a nutrient sink, absorbing the biomass of the Everglades and locking it away in large cryptic bodies that nothing native could eat. The ecosystem supply lines were cut. Native predators like bobcats were starved out, their prey base consumed by the invader. Human counterinsurgency efforts proved largely ineffective. The main problem was that humans could not find most of the snakes. Studies estimated that human hunters detect fewer than 1% of the pythons present in a given area. For every snake removed, 100 remained to breed. With females capable of laying clutches of 50 to 100 eggs, the enemy possessed superior logistics and reproduction capabilities. By 2012, the war appeared lost. The pythons were the uncontested rulers of the swamp. The prevailing theory held that native mammals avoided pythons entirely, viewing them with fear. The ecosystem was silent. Native resistance was assumed to be non-existent. Then the telemetry signals began to tell a different story. The turnaround did not start with a new weapon. It started with a new plan. Recognizing that searching millions of acres of swamp by hand was useless, researchers changed tactics. They decided to use the enemy against itself. They caught male pythons, fitted them with tracking chips, and released them. These traitor snakes did exactly what the biologists hoped. They led researchers straight to female pythons during mating season. But in 2021, a team led by researcher Andrea Curillo took it a step further. They did not just want to find the snakes, they wanted to understand where they lived. The goal was to find the nests and destroy the eggs before they could hatch, hitting the enemy's supply line. That is when they found the anomaly. In June 2021, trackers led the team to a hidden nest in Big Cypress National Preserve. They found a massive female python, 14 feet long and weighing 120 pounds, coiled around her eggs. The team set up cameras to watch. For days, nothing happened. The snake just sat there, shivering to keep the eggs warm, guarding them closely. But on the evening of June 1st, the mother snake left. She had to. Even a python needs to drink and warm up in the sun to stay alive. This was the opening. At 5:12 in the afternoon, the camera triggered. It picked up movement in the corner. A male bobcat stepped into the frame. Experts simply assumed local animals were too scared or confused by the strange size and smell of these giant snakes to get close. But the camera did not lie. The bobcat took the first bold step, sniffed out the eggs and destroyed them. This was not just a lucky break. The bobcat was careful. It sniffed the area to make sure the giant mother snake was not right behind it. It made a choice. It destroyed its future predators before they could see the light of day. Scientists have a fancy word for this, behavioral plasticity, but in plain English, it is learning. The bobcat figured out how to crack the code. For 3 decades, the python relied on the local animals being clueless, but that night proved the natives of the Everglades were prepared to fight back. This signaled the end of the easy victory era for the python. The native animals were not just dying anymore. They were looking at the invaders and seeing a resource. The footage was verified and published, turning a crazy story into scientific fact. The shift was real. The analysis of the encounter revealed that this was not just a random snack. It was a calculated raid. When researchers broke down the timeline, they identified 3 specific moves that showed just how fast the locals are adapting. First, the bobcat played it safe. The report notes that upon finding the nest, the animal did not just dive in. It spent time checking the perimeter. It was analyzing the scent trail to figure out exactly how far away the giant mother snake was. This proves just how well the bobcat had evolved. Second, it had to figure out how to break in. Python eggs are not like chicken eggs. They are large and have a tough, leathery shell. The bobcat had to learn a new way to bite through them to get to the yolk inside. It faced a new problem, but it solved it immediately. But the third move was the most dangerous one for the python, saving the leftovers. The documentation confirms the bobcat took eggs out of the nest and hid them in the bushes nearby. By hiding the eggs for later, the bobcat stopped treating the invasion as a threat and started treating it like an all-you-can-eat restaurant. It was banking the enemy unborn babies for future meals. Then came the escalation. When the 120-pound female python returned to her nest, she found a 20-pound bobcat waiting. In the past, the bobcat would flee for its life. Not this time. The data confirms a physical standoff. The python struck, and the bobcat dodged and fought back. The native predator decided the reward was worth the risk of fighting a monster 6 times its weight. So, how did this happen? How did a Florida cat learn to hunt a giant reptile from across the world? It was not instinct. It was trial and error. Driven by hunger, a few bold animals likely investigated the strange new smell. Once they broke that first egg, there was no turning back. They overcame the fear of the unknown and reclassified the python from scary monster to dinner. Compare the old reality to the new one. Before 2021, the scent of a python made animals run away. Today, that same scent makes them investigate. The bobcat has switched sides from a passive victim to an active saboteur, taking apart the python population at its weakest point, the nest. The evidence is not just one lucky camera trap. The counterattack has been verified by hard data and forensic evidence collected across the Everglades. The initial report on the nest raid was peer-reviewed and published in the scientific journal Ecology and Evolution, moving it from a fisherman's tale to established fact. But the resistance did not stop at stealing eggs. The conflict has escalated to lethal combat. A separate investigation in the Picayune Strand State Forest uncovered something even more significant. Native predators are now killing adult pythons. Biologists found the carcass of a 52-pound python that had been decapitated and buried under pine needles. This was not a scavenger cleaning up a mess. It was a kill site. To confirm the culprit, researchers set up a camera over the buried snake. The footage captured a 25-pound bobcat returning to feed on the carcass. Do the math. A 25-pound native cat took down an invader more than double its weight. This confirms that the bobcat is punching effectively above its weight class, using agility to outmaneuver the slower reptile that relies on ambush. The bobcat is not fighting alone. Other native Everglades predators have learned the pythons can be defeated, turning up the pressure on the invaders. Tracking studies using radio-tagged python hatchlings revealed a high casualty rate among the young pythons. When researchers tracked the lost signals, they did not find dead pythons on the ground. They found live Florida cottonmouths. X-ray imaging revealed the python transmitters sitting inside the stomachs of the native vipers. This is critical. The cottonmouths are eating the pythons before they can grow big enough to become untouchable. The evidence is now undeniable. From the nests to the hatchlings to the adults, the native species have identified the enemy, and they are systematically taking them out. For the people trying to save the Everglades, this is the news they have been waiting for. It changes the math of the entire operation. Sending teams of hunters into the swamp is expensive, dangerous, and hard work. As the data shows, humans miss almost every snake they walk past. But a bobcat? It works for free, has the ultimate tracking system, it hunts 24 hours a day, and it can go places no human can reach. In military strategy, this is called a force multiplier. A human hunter might spend a month tracking one snake. A single bobcat can wipe out a nest of dozens of eggs in less than 1 hour. That means fewer invaders the ecosystem has to deal with next year. If the bobcat population keeps doing this, they become a biological defense force that never sleeps. But human strategy is changing as well. Lessons are being taken from native predators. Instead of hunting the pythons directly, which is like looking for a needle in a haystack, researchers now track the prey. They are putting GPS collars on raccoons and opossums and letting them go. The plan could be termed ruthless to some, but still it is smart. Pythons are hard to find. Raccoons are easy to find. When a python eats a collared raccoon, the GPS tag keeps working from inside the snake. The researchers track the signal of the dead raccoon, find the bloated python, and remove it. This effectively turns the victims into Trojan horses, using the python's own hunger against it. However, there is a catch. The long game must be considered. History tells us that in any conflict, when one side upgrades its weapons, the other side builds better armor. This is the evolutionary arms. Right now, the bobcats are winning the easy battles. They are raiding the nests that are easy to find. But nature is a harsh teacher. If the bobcats eat all the eggs from the careless snakes, the only snakes left to breed will be the paranoid ones. Pythons may adapt once again. Nesting behavior could shift into deeper water, beyond the reach of bobcats. More concerning, natural selection may favor more aggressive mothers, individuals that strike faster and defend more fiercely. By removing the most vulnerable snakes, a harder, more resilient population could emerge. The conflict is not ending. It is becoming more complex. Step back from the individual encounters, and a broader pattern comes into focus. This is what nature looks like under extreme pressure. Evolution is often imagined as a slow process, something that unfolds over thousands of years. In the Florida Everglades, that assumption collapses. What is happening here is evolution in real time. In less than 30 years, native wildlife has solved a biological problem that should have taken centuries. No new teeth appeared. No genetic immunity emerged. The bobcat did not become stronger or larger, it became smarter. This reinforces a hard rule of survival. In the wild, intelligence is not abstract reasoning, it is necessity expressed through behavior. When familiar prey disappears, adaptation is not optional. The animals learn to exploit the new resource, or they vanish with the old one. Florida is not unique in this respect. Similar patterns have appeared elsewhere. In Australia, invasive cane toads spread across the continent, armed with toxins powerful enough to kill almost any predator that swallowed them. For years, native species died by the thousands. Then something changed. Local crows learned to flip the toads onto their backs and consume only the non-toxic organs. The threat remained, but it was no longer unbeatable. Now compare that outcome to Guam. When the invasive brown tree snake arrived, native birds failed to adapt. They never learned how to respond. The result was near total extinction. The difference lies in the type of survivors involved. In Florida, the remaining mammals are generalists. Raccoons and bobcats are not specialists tied to a single food source. They are adaptable, curious, and opportunistic. That curiosity was once just a trait. Under invasion pressure, it became a weapon. Fear of the unfamiliar gave way to experimentation, and experimentation became survival. Still, it is important to be realistic about the outcome. Even if this resistance continues, the Everglades will not revert to the state it was in before 1990. That ecosystem is gone. What is emerging instead is something new. This future Everglades is not pristine. It is resilient. It is a system where Asian pythons and American predators coexist in a tense and unstable balance. The old Everglades is dead. What is waking up now is something tougher, more adaptive, and far less forgiving. The battle for the Everglades is far from over, but the landscape has shifted. The python still has the numbers, but it has lost its greatest asset, being untouchable. The locals aren't just victims anymore. They are fighting back. This leaves one big question. Can the native animals learn fast enough to destroy the pythons and stop the invasion? Or will the pythons figure out a new way to survive and shut down this comeback before it gets too big? Look at the evidence. Do you bet on the reproduction speed of the reptile or the learning speed of the native Everglades animals? Leave your prediction in the comments.